have 10 a.m. to get started. I'm Greg Evans with the Parks Department Transportation. I serve as your chairman. If y'all would, let's join our co-chairman, Mr. Jason Peters, also with Florida DOT, as we stand and switch to fly the flag.
On behalf of the citizens of Madison County Board of Commissioners, I want to welcome each and every one of you, task force members and concerned citizens and audience. It's a great privilege to me to see this crowd, the turnout. I thank for the work that you're doing, the vision that you have, that you're here, that you're bringing it to each county, each community. You listen to the citizens and listen to their concerns, their wishes, and their desires and wants, and give them the vision. It's going to be short and sweet on my welcome. Madison County is a small county. We appreciate the time and effort that's going into this. I know that you do have a break from 12:30 to 1. We have some really, really good restaurants downtown. I encourage you to get out and experience Madison, the hospitality and the southern charm that we have. I'm not going to mention any restaurants because I may forget some of them, and I don't want to get in trouble. But on behalf of the citizens of Madison County, the Board of Commissioners, I thank you very much. I want to take this time real quick to introduce a fellow commissioner, Commissioner Kelly, which serves on the task force. And our county manager, Brian Kaufman, serves on the task force as well. They've done a really, really good job in reporting back to our board on the progress and the work that's being done. I look forward to sitting in on this meeting today and learning more of the visions of this task force. Thank you. Welcome to Madison.
Each of you remember Guillermo. He was our facilitator at our last meeting. And at this time, Guillermo, I'll turn the floor over to you, sir.
Hear me all right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a great privilege to be here with you and participate in this very important effort. As Mr. Chairman said, my name is Guillermo Vidal, and with me, Greg, introduce yourself.
Greg Vaughn, so it's good to see everybody again.
And we are part of the owner's rep contract? Yes. Okay. All right. Have you got me here? Okay, there we go.
Yep.
So we're going to help you choreograph the wonderful dance that you're going to do today. So to start us off, what we'd like to do is have you introduce yourselves, and if you would just give your name and who you represent, and then if you're here as an alternate today, if you would tell us that, or if you represent a regional council or a metropolitan planning organization. But anyway, if you can do that for us, we'd appreciate it. Go ahead.
John Grosskopf, President of North Florida College.
Eric Anderson, Enterprise, Florida.
Hi, I'm Thomas Hawkins. I am representing 1,000 Friends of Florida on the task force.
Scott Carnahan, Citrus County Board of County Commissioners.
Warren Zwanka, representing Swanee River Water Management District in place of Steve Minnis.
Lance Jones, representing Florida Gateway College in place of Lawrence Barrett.
Betsy Barfield, Jefferson County Commission. I'm also on the Capital Regional Transportation Planning Agency.
I'm Mario Rubio with the Department of Economic Opportunity, substituting for Brian McManus.
Ken Armstrong, President of Florida Trucking Association.
Chris Stahl, I represent Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
Matt Brooks, Levy County Board of County Commissioners.
Chris Wynn, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
Greg Slade, Capital Region TPA, sitting in for Leon County Commissioner Kristen Dozier.
Susan Ramsey with Integrity Professional Services, and I'm representing the Florida Economic Development Council.
Mary Cross with the Division of Line Services.
Audrey Kidwell with Volunteer Florida.
Ron Kitchen, Citrus County Board of County Commissioners, and representing the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council.
Good morning. I'm Jason Peters, Department of Transportation, District 3, which encompasses the Panhandle area.
Greg Evans, DOT.
Brian Kaufman, representing the Madison County Board of County Commissioners.
Good morning, Lyle Sigler, representing Northwest Florida Water Management District.
Chris Lee, Business and Professional Regulation.
Good morning, Chris Bailey, representing the Florida Internet and Television.
Good morning, I'm Kent Wimmer. I represent Defenders of Wildlife.
Good morning, Jeff Kennard from Citrus County Commission, representing Hernando Citrus MPO.
Good morning, I'm Mark Futrell on behalf of the Florida Public Service Commission.
Good morning, Scott Coons, representing North Central Florida Regional Planning Council.
Good morning, I'm Pam Fiegel, representing the Taylor County Board of Commission. Good morning, I'm Janet Bowman, representing the Nature Conservancy.
Mark Hatch, Dixie County Commissioner.
Diana Duque, Florida Department of Health, sitting on behalf of Paul Myers.
Charles Lee, representing Audubon, Florida.
Good morning, Kurt Williams. I'm representing Florida Farm Bureau in place of Charles Shin today.
Diane Head, representing Career Source Florida.
Michelle Hopkins, representing the Southwest Florida Water Management District.
Mr. Chairman, you want to introduce the rest of the staff?
Wow. There were lots of us here. So we have Will Watts, our Chief Engineer out of Tallahassee, Way Chief Planner, also in Tallahassee, and Ryan Asmus is the Suncoast Production Lead based in Lake City. Several more in the room as well.
Thank you all for participating in this. We know it's your time is very important, and for you to be here and share with us, it's greatly appreciated. So before we do anything else, let's talk a little bit just about our safety concerns. So as you can see, you're surrounded by exits on all four sides here. If we need to evacuate, there's an open field out behind the building here, and if you could move just closer to the road, that'll be great for you to do. Also, the restrooms are over on this side of the building, and I know that we have some CPR, some people who are certified to give CPR. I know, Greg, are you one of them?
Yes.
If we could ask you to raise your hand, those of you who are certified to do so. Great, thank you, and we'll be here for that. And then I think the last thing I want to ask you to do is please silence your cell phones. That way it won't interrupt when in the midst of discussion. We appreciate that. So, Greg, anything you want to add?
The only thing I'd add is for task force members, if you would, please, so that everybody can hear you, when you there should be enough slack in the microphone cord where you will need to pull it to you to be able to speak into it. If you get more than about 8 inches away from the microphone, it's very hard to hear. So if you're speaking, we will adhere to what we've done before. If you have a comment, you can put your tent card up. That would be fine, and that way I'll be looking around the room to be able to identify you. But if you would, when you are speaking, if you would speak clearly into the microphone, bring it up to you. It's okay. It's not going to bite you. I promise. But anyway, that would help out a lot as far as the sound goes.
So as you know, this is our 4th meeting of this very important work, and I think some of the time we'll spend today is really going over information that some that many of you require to be better informed as to the decisions that we need to make as a task force and to create the guiding principles. So we just want to make sure that you know that this is information that you've requested, and we think we've got great staff and expertise ready to present that for you. Well, we also remember that everyone in the task force has a unique perspective, and it's important for us to make sure that everyone is heard. So if you will allow me, sometimes I'm going to skip you over to make sure that we get everybody involved. And that's not, I hope you don't think I'm being rude about that, but we really think it's important for everyone to participate. There's an old saying that says when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change. And the best way to do that is to listen to each other and maybe hold back reacting and make sure that you take into account the information that others are giving you so that perhaps then you begin to change the way you look at things and do it in a more constructive, unified way with your fellow task force members. So if you would, when you are ready to speak or you'd like to be called, if you would turn your name tag to the side and we will pick it up. I have to admit, my eyesight is not that good, so I can probably see your name tag flipped up, but I probably can't see the name on it. So if you'll forgive me in the early beginnings, we'll conduct business this way. So as you know, in today's agenda, you've got quite a bit to do, so I don't want to go over it in great detail, but in the morning we're going to talk about public engagement activities, workforce development updates, economic and workforce development opportunities, and the local government comprehensive plans. Now, I know some of you have asked for the public comment and information processes, and we want to talk about that, and we wanted to tell you that we definitely agree with the need to have public comment and be that part of our work, and it's important to have that. It's also important for you to have time to do your work. So finding the balance is a challenge, and we've provided 3 different ways to do that. As you know, we'll have sign-up sheets in the back for folks who want to comment or to make comments in writing. Then we also have a sign-up sheet for those who want to speak at the 4 o'clock session today. And then the third way is you can go into the MCORES website to make your comments. Greg, anything you want to add to that?
No, and I apologize. We're trying to get some sound issues. I think this is better. I heard the other microphone was kind of cutting in and out. So you covered the fact that we moved the public comment period up to 4 p.m. So task force members, if you can stay as long as you can. I know that some of you have commitments and so forth, and obviously, we appreciate you volunteering your time today to stay away from be away from your normal schedule. But if you could stay, and the accommodation that we tried to make was to move that public comment period up earlier into the agenda to be able to make it a little bit easier so everybody could hang around for that. But we appreciate your help with that.
So I cover the topics in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we're going to cover corridor planning process and then the AMI considerations for guiding principles. And I know that you're interested in both of those. Note that lunch is on your own this afternoon when we have a break. However, we hope that you'll take advantage of some of the on-site food trucks that there'll be, as well as some of the restaurants inside. As I think there's a list of restaurants available for those restaurants nearby.
In your packets at the back, on the right-hand side of your packet in the very back, is a listing of restaurants that are available, and you can do lunch in an hour. I promise. We did it yesterday, and I'm not going to tell you where we ate, but it was very good. So anyway.
Yeah, I usually just need mass quantities of consumable material, but and I'm sure we can find that. Greg, you want to talk a little bit about what's in their folder?
Sure. I'll go over real quick kind of what's in your folder. Everyone should have, all task force members should have at your seat a folder. Do we have someone who does not have a folder, a task force member, just to make for sure? All right, looks like we're good there. So you'll see the agenda. right up front. And then, as Guillermo said, we'll be covering some stuff in regards to that in more detail about workforce development, economic development. There's also the updated work plan that's in there. Not a whole lot has changed in regards to that. Today we will be hitting the workforce development and economic development at next month's task force meeting, which will be held in Jefferson County. We'll be touching on utilities and improving existing corridors. At the task force meeting in April, number 6, we'll be touching on hurricane evacuation and technology improvement, some of the key items that were in the legislation. And then basically task force meetings 7 and 8, we're going to really kind of shift and kind of focus more towards the actual draft report that's due October 1 and getting, some of those guiding principles that we've talked about at each of the meetings, nailing some of those down and getting into more detail in regards to that. You'll also see in your packet, there's a lot of data. There's some maps information in there that will be relevant to some of the information and some of the discussion that we'll have today. There's some, the panelist biographies is listed in there for the panelist discussion that we'll have a little later. There's land use maps in there for each of the counties and so forth. So just a lot of information in your member packet. We appreciate you going through that. Obviously this morning, not during this. I feel like a preacher. It's kind of like, hey, don't look through your bulletin during service. But it's kind of one of those things to where it's good information, good stuff for you to be able to take away from today's meeting based on the discussion that we have to kind of provide a little bit more context to things.
Okay, I know that we came here to hear you talk, and we're almost done, and I swear we'll let you talk from this point on. But just to reiterate one more thing, the public comment stations are open all day, so we certainly encourage people to make comments there. I did want to give you a recap of our work plan. Kind of went over what we're doing today, and again, we'll be working on guiding principles in the afternoon session as well as the information you're getting today. The similar things will happen in meetings 5 and 6. We'll bring specific topic areas that you have asked for. And so today, of course, we're talking about economic and workforce development and local comprehensive plans as well as the corridor planning process, all very important, all things that were left open at the last meeting. Also left open that we need information is at meeting 5, we'll have more information about utilities, probably have a panel to talk about that, existing and forecasted traffic data, how existing facilities can be improved, emergency evacuation and response, and how federal, state, and regional local plans fit together and align. So at meetings 7 and 8, as Greg said, we'll focus on finalizing the recommendations and reviewing the task report. So this will give you an idea of what the work plan looks like for you, and that we are moving steadily ahead to having the report done for you to review at meeting number 9 in September. So with that, any questions on that, on any of that? Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you, Guillermo. As we are reminded in the previous task forces, as we will continue in future task forces to remind us that this task force operates in an official capacity, and therefore we must constantly be mindful of the Florida Sunshine Law. So as in previous task force meetings, we have a quick video. I also want to again introduce Mr. David Flynn. David, please. David is with the Attorney General's office. He is available to answer any questions any of us may have related to the Sunshine Law. So with that, can we please play the quick video?
Florida's Sunshine Law. Florida's government, in the Sunshine Law, provides a right of access to governmental proceedings at both the state and local levels. In the absence of a statutory exemption, it applies to any gathering of 2 or more members of the same board to discuss some matter which will foreseeably come before that board for action. Scope of the Sunshine Law. Board members may not engage in private discussions with each other about board business, either in person or by telephone, email, texting, or any other type of electronic communication, such as Facebook or blogging. While an individual board member is not prohibited from discussing board business with staff or non-board members, these individuals may not be used as a liaison to communicate information between board members. For example, a board member cannot ask staff to poll other board members to determine their views on a board issue. The Sunshine Law applies to advisory boards created pursuant to law or ordinance or otherwise established by public agencies or officials. Staff meetings are not normally subject to the Sunshine Law. However, staff committees may be subject to the Sunshine Law if they are deemed to be part of the decision-making process, as opposed to traditional staff functions like fact-finding or information gathering. Board meetings. While boards may adopt reasonable rules and policies to ensure orderly conduct of meetings, the Sunshine Law does not allow boards to ban non-disruptive videotaping, tape recording, or photography at public meetings. Public Records Law. Florida's Public Records Act, Chapter 119, Florida Statutes, provides a right of access to records of state and local governments, as well as private entities acting on their behalf. If materials fall within the definition of a public record, it must be disclosed to the public unless there is a statutory exemption. The term public records means all documents, papers, letters, maps, books, tapes, photographs, films, sound recordings, data processing software, or other material, regardless of the physical form, characteristics, or means of transmission. This includes electronic communication like text messaging and emails, made or received pursuant to law or ordinance, or in connection with the transaction of official business, by an agency, including a private entity action on behalf of a public agency, which are used to perpetuate, communicate, or formalize knowledge. Providing public records. Public records cannot be withheld at the request of the sender. A requester is not required to show a legitimate or non-commercial interest as a condition of access. A request cannot be denied because it is overbroad. Unless authorized by another statute, an agency may not require that public records requests be in writing or require the requester to identify himself or herself.
All right, thank you. Now we move into public engagement activities. Ryan, you want to give us a status of the outreach that you and your group's been doing lately?
Good morning, task force members.
Good morning.
This presentation is a summary of the public input and activity since our last task force meeting held back in Perry on December 17th. On behalf of the task force, the department appreciates all the comments that we have received from the public. Your voice is important. Since our last task force meeting, we held 4 community open houses throughout the study area. We've had one in Lafayette County, Taylor County, Levy, and Citrus. In Levy and Citrus County, we hosted a joint open house with the Northern Turnpike Corridor, where we were able to present information on both corridors. Our team was able to gain feedback and engage with over 350 members of the public over the last several weeks. At these open houses, members of the public were able to view information presented to the task force at task force meeting number 3, such as display boards that contain information on economic characteristics, as well as environmental aspects of the corridor study area. Also, they were able to interact with the touchscreens with multiple layers of information and ask questions of our subject matter experts. Opportunities for comments were also provided and welcomed. In addition, the department has heard from the public that have taken advantage of providing information through email, website comments, traditional mail, community open houses, and public comment opportunities at the task force meetings. The CORES official website serves as the public one-stop shop to obtain information on all 3 corridors. Also to provide an online e-newsletter subscription and commenting options. From December 2nd to January 31st, the website was visited by over 7,400 people, with over 32,000 website views. Additionally, 65 new subscribers requested to receive the email and e-newsletter, and nearly 1,200 comments were received through the FDOT Listens email address. In December through January, we have received over 150 comments on the project. The CORES web mapping application view counts from December 2nd through January 31st. For the Northern Turnpike Corridor, there was 1,282 views. For the Southwest Central Corridor, there was 1,511 views. And then for the Suncoast Corridor, there was 2,135 views. The department continues to have one-on-one meetings and phone conversations with you, our task force members, to continue to review the process to date and the process moving forward. The department appreciates the feedback received as we look to make these task force meetings as productive as possible. FDOT is also meeting with the local communities and municipal officials to gather as much perspective as possible. You may have seen in the latest newsletter that we offer workshops for local agencies and stakeholders. There are opportunities for groups to email the department at FDOT Listens to schedule an opportunity for a workshop for those small groups. We embrace communication methods that are convenient to the public, so we continue to update the public on activities of the task force and open houses through social media, as well as e-newsletters sent to all those who signed up. There are still multiple opportunities for engagement throughout the task force process. Next month, we're going to be in Jefferson County. We'll have both a community open house and a task force meeting number 5. The next community house will be held on March 12th at the First Baptist Church in Monticello from 5:30 to 7:30. Our next task force meeting is scheduled to be held in Monticello at the First Church of the Nazarene on March 24th. Again, thank you for your continued engagement in this process. Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you for the overview of the public comment and public involvement process. It seems very comprehensive. We've now had, as I've seen on the agenda, not only over 1,200 comments that have come in through the website, but I'm certain that we've had quite a few specific comments come at each of the public sessions that you've had, not only at the task force meetings, but at the other meetings you've been having in communities. And I'm wondering if the department is tabulating a sense of what the people who are coming to these meetings and commenting are saying. What are they recommending to you? And when will we as task force members be able to get a breakdown of what the public is saying with regard to this particular CORES project?
Yes, sir. It has been very dynamic for us, especially with the 4 community open houses held this past month. So we are working at compiling all that information right now.
Wei or Will, do you have anything you want to add to that, please?
So Charles, you're right. We've got a lot of data on us right now, and we're trying to sort through that so how we can present it to this forum in the best way possible. We're not trying to filter it. We're just trying to figure out how, because we got lots of comments. So it's just a lot of data. We're in the middle of it. We've got teams working on it right now. We hope to get something back to you in this group, hopefully the next task force meeting, if not sooner.
I think it would be very useful from a qualitative standpoint to know what the public is saying.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
sorry, Janet Bowman with the Nature Conservancy. Would it be possible perhaps to set an appointment to go over for task force members to DOT and look through it? I can't hear.
Yeah, pull your microphone a little closer to you, Janet.
I said, is it possible for task force members to maybe make an appointment at DOT and go over and look through it ourselves? Is that an option?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Amy Tootle, are you ready to give us an update on the Workforce Development Initiative?
Sorry, I'm short. I have to bring everything down a little bit. Good morning. My name's Amy Tootle. I'm the Corridor Program Manager at FDOT, and I'm heading up the Workforce Development Program here. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about with our update on workforce development, I kind of like to go through and give you some statistics. Florida's work program is one of the largest in the country. Our total adopted funding and budget for the next 5 years is over $52 billion, 46% of which is allocated to construction. As of January 29th, we had 514 active construction contracts worth over $12.9 billion. Our state highway system is over 44,000 lane miles with over 334 daily vehicle miles traveled. In terms of our population growth, I know you've seen this slide previously, but we've added some stuff. Florida is the third largest state in the U.S. by population, and our population density as of 2019 was 21.5 million, with a forecasted for 2070 at 33.7 million. We were the second fastest growing state in the United States, but recently we got some new statistics that show Florida is the leading relocation state in the United States now. And that's according to the U-Haul company in the data migration trends for 2019. Gross states are calculated by the net gain of a one-way U-Haul truck entering a state versus leaving the state during a calendar year. So that's a new change. So we are now, according to U-Haul, the fastest growing. We did have, in 2018, 127 million visitors to the state, and by 2026, we're forecasted to have over 168 million. In terms of unemployment rates for this corridor area, in 2019, I know you've seen this, our statewide average was 3.1%. Out of the eight counties in this corridor study, 7 are above that 3.1 threshold average. In terms of employment by the industry, as you can see, one of the leading employers is the education and health services and the retail trade, followed by construction. Now, back in 2019, this is just for this area. Back in 2019, the duties of the department were amended under Florida Statute 334.044, parent 35. And I'll go over a couple things. I don't want to read it for point. I'll try to paraphrase. But we were added duties in terms of the Workforce Development Initiative. And so we are to provide a road and bridge construction workforce development program in consultation with affected stakeholders for construction of projects designated in the department's work program. Some key things that I have pointed out here are bolded, and it's to provide direct economic benefits to communities in which the department is constructing infrastructure projects and to promote employment opportunities, including within areas of low income and high unemployment. Additionally, the Workforce Development Program must serve as a tool to address the construction labor shortage for recruiting and developing a group of skilled workers for infrastructure projects to increase the likelihood that the department's projects remain on time and within budget. Another important fact within the statute that was added this past year was that by June 30th of 2020 and annually thereafter, the department shall prepare and provide a report to the governor, President of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives detailing the results of the findings and containing any recommendations relating to future program refinements. So going over that Florida statute, that's kind of the new duties of the department. In Florida statute section 338.2278 parent 8 of the multi-use corridors of regional economic significance gave us the funding to help promote this new workforce development initiative. So we are funded for the next 3 fiscal years for $2 million to use specifically and to help deliver the duties of the department under the 334 statute. So now I can get into the meat and potatoes of what the FDOT Construction Workforce Development Program looks like. The first component of the department's Workforce Development Program targets attracting the individuals who are unemployed. And so we're really excited about this new program. It's our statewide workforce development training program. It was something that we had piloted last year, and then because of this new funding, we're able to implement statewide. And the goal is to recruit and train and employ individuals who have not been exposed to the road and bridge construction industry. Some of the activities, what we do with this particular training program is we partner with the DOT contractors and look at projects where they need skilled labor. They have the need, they come to the department, they get with us, and then what we do, we get with our community partners, and we try to go out there and recruit in the areas where their projects are located and bring individuals in. Our community partners, such as Career Source Florida, will then help the individuals fill out applications, and then the contractors will review the applications and look at the individuals and invite them to participate in a one-day orientation. At this orientation, the individuals and the applicants are then kind of informed about what the construction, road and bridge industry is about and what it would look like for them if they're employed. After that particular orientation, the contractors will then look at the group of applicants and then work with our local community partner to determine who they want to proceed forward and to participate into a one-week training program. And within that training program, the applicants learn a lot of little life soft skills, because those are things that they need to understand, like waking up on time and getting to work. Those are things that we really have to hit them home with, that they know that we have long hours and they need to be able to handle this. Also, they get the on-the-field training. They get to go out onto the construction project and learn and see what's going on. The applicants that participate in this one-week training program are expected to show up on time and stay the entire week. And after successful completion of this program, the contractors will review the applicants, and then they will determine which ones they will want to proceed with employing. And that employment happens very quickly. The graduation, the class ends on a Friday, and they start the next week. One of our other existing adult programs is On Board for Jobs. This is an existing program that we have to help job seekers with employment opportunities with our construction contractors. It is something to really help increase the numbers of minorities, females, and veterans in the road and bridge construction program. And this is one of our programs that is run through our Equal Opportunity Office. Some of the activities that are involved with the On Board for Jobs program happen to have hiring fairs, so our representatives go out to local communities and where they have hiring fairs and help recruit through that avenue. We also have online job opportunities. When the contractors have needs, they contact us, and then we're able to put on our website the individual needs through the On Board for Job website, the needs of the local communities, and so job seekers can go there and then have that direct contact. In terms of what we're looking at for the future, what's under development, we're really excited about this one is our prison inmate transition program. And the conceptual goal on this is to transition released prison inmates from the correctional system into road and bridge construction contracts. The program is being developed in partnership with the Department of Corrections, and FDOT contractors. And the issue that we've seen is that many individuals who are incarcerated have difficulties finding employment after being released. So the intent is to set up this program where we can get these individuals reacclimated into working society. Now, the second component of the department's workforce development program targets attracting non-college bound students who are in high school or in a vocational student and try to put them on a career path into the road and bridge construction industry, post-secondary education. Students are identified by their school administrators as candidates who may not be college bound, and they're selected to attend one of our construction career days events. Each year, and we have for several years, this is an existing program, we have 5 different construction career days events throughout the state of Florida in the different regions. And those individuals attend these different construction career days events, and this is held in partnership with our contractors and our consultants and the DOT individuals, and they volunteer to host various learning labs. And these learning labs can be demonstrative, instructional, hands-on, or a combination of all of the above. And so these labs, as you can see maybe in this picture here, can be something as simple as demonstrating how heavy machinery works. So the students are able to see what like a front-end excavator or an excavator looks like. Or they can get a hands-on type of experience like trying to learn how to tie rebar. These groups of kids or students, I should say, are 10 to 20 students, and they have a chaperone with them, and they rotate in and out of these learning labs at 20-minute intervals. So something that we realized is that we need to have an understanding to reach these students in more than one venue. And so to capitalize on their excitement of construction career days, we are expanding our program to include a summer youth internship program and a construction career academy. So at our construction career days events, our DOT representatives are utilizing tablets to survey the students as they're going through the CCD events and asking them what really excited them about the CCD event and trying to get their interest into what if they're interested in taking part into a summer internship program or perhaps a one-day construction and career academy. So that is a add-on under development program that we didn't have previously that we're very excited about taking forward and trying to keep track of these kids and keep them interested into going into the road and bridge construction programs. So here's my information, my contact information. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them now, or you can more than welcome to email me.
Is this working now? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good. I feel a little bit like you ever go to watch a comedian perform on stage and they tell a joke and nobody laughs and they go, "Is this working?" Yeah, so that's a little bit how I feel. Amy, do you have any rough numbers on what kind of people have participated in the program?
In the Construction Career Days program, we just had our Central Florida Construction Career Days in the past 2 weeks, and we had over 2,000 students attend, and we had over 500 students that were interested in the internship program and over 600 that were interested in a construction academy. So we're very excited for that because now we have those metrics and we can have something to work towards in terms of the student aspect of it. In terms of the existing adult programs, the training program has just been underway. We were piloting it last year, but now that we have the funding, we can take it full on. And so we had a training class a few weeks ago. In terms of that, we had 15 individuals that were hired. I think 16 started out that week, 15 were hired. We have another one going on this week. We have 6 more planned at the end of June, and we're anticipating another 5 to 6 through the end of the year. In terms of our On Board for Jobs program, we've had over 130 applicants that were hired by contractors in the past few years.
Those are great numbers. I've been in the road construction business for 40 years or so, pretty much from the day I was born. Anyway, the one thing you find with people who work on construction is that they're not doing it from home, they're on site. So they use also a lot of the local businesses as well. So there's a tremendous opportunity not only for local folks to participate in these programs, but also people who come to the area to work and use local businesses. Any questions? I see one name tag up, and I'm not sure if that's a residue from the last.
Janet, do you have, is that from Ford?
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
good. Yeah.
Any questions for Amy on this program?
So Guillermo, I just wanted to point out that we're hosting a construction career day over in Jacksonville about a week and a half from now. And
Great.
Annually, we expose about 2,000 kids to all aspects of highway construction.
That's great numbers. Questions, comments? None? Mr.
Thank
Chairman?
you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
So in my opening comments, I failed to do something. I didn't thank the Madison Church of God for offering this facility that we're here, and today the beautiful Life Center here. So thanks to the pastor and that congregation for allowing us to be here today. A couple of housekeeping items. Restrooms are over to the left. Also, we have bottled water and some snacks along this wall over here, and we have a recycle bin. So please encourage each of us to recycle. And with that, we will go into a at least 15-minute break, and we'll set up for our panel of subject matter experts that'll be up next. So let's take a quick 15-minute break, and we'll continue. Thank you. All right, thank you. We are on schedule, and I love to keep it that way. In advance, I wanted to the panelists, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come share your experience and knowledge with this task force. And with that, Mr. Guillermo, I'll turn the floor over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we go on with the panel, Commissioner Jones, do you want to introduce yourself and just tell us who you represent?
I'm Commissioner Jones from Lafayette County. I'm sitting in for Anthony, who's on this task force here, and just glad to be here. So,
thank you. Appreciate having you here. Commissioner Jones didn't realize we wanted him at the table. He didn't arrive late. I just want to make sure of that. So, no demerit so you heard from Amy information about workforce development with the department program. So internal to the department. So now we have a panel here that's going to talk about workforce development outside from external sources. So we have a great panel in front of us today, and they're not going to make presentations. They're going to introduce themselves, what their area of expertise is, you know, how they're related to this, and then we will open it up for you to ask questions. So let me introduce the panel. Diane Hutchins is here, Cherise Stewart, Grace Swoop, and I'm not going to give your background so I don't steal your thunder. Beth Sicchetti, and Andrew Collins. And I think it's a toss-up between Cherise and Gray for unusual names for the day. But anyway, Diane, if you would start us off.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Diane Hutchings. I'm a current county commissioner in Clay County, Florida. Prior to that, I served 2 terms on a municipal city council, which had a roaring population of about 5,000. And we initially heard about the Beltway that came into our county recently, about 25 or 30 years ago. So I'm living to see it, which is a big deal. As commissioner, I've enjoyed being on the Economic Development Corporation in Clay County and kind of seeing all the parts and pieces of workforce development and bringing in industry. I've also served and am currently serving on the North Florida Transportation Planning Organization. And again, there seeing how can we use transportation to better our economic health in our different counties. I serve as the liaison from the board to the Chamber of Commerce, again, working with businesses through economic development and making sure that they're up to speed on what we're doing and what we expect to happen with transportation in our county. With that, I'll pass the mic to Cherise Stewart.
Good morning. My name is Cherise Stewart. Just a little bit about myself and how I got into this panel today. So, lifelong resident of Clay County, so like a bunch of you folks in the room who live in mostly rural counties. Clay County was very much a rural county when I was a child growing up, And like Diane, I've enjoyed seeing our county change over the years and feel like I have had a good mix of experiences to hopefully help Clay County continue to grow in the right direction. So my background is in education. I taught secondary ed and was an administrator for over 20 years in our county education system. During that time, I was also a 2-term county commissioner, served actually a little bit of time with Commissioner Hutchings. And then I actually became a staffer about 3 years after I got off the county commission. So now I work for the Board of County Commissions. So it's been an interesting ride, but I would say in all the experiences that I've had, that's allowed me to have a pretty good lens on what I'm doing now, which is economic development, and especially as the First Coast Expressway is coming in through our community, how to leverage and work with large landowners, with our education system, with our schools, in order to get the right types of jobs into our community as we continue to grow and make sure that our workforce is there to take those jobs as well. So hopefully we can help you guys today and give you some insight, and also have business cards if you want to chat later. Thanks.
So good morning. My name is Grace Swope, and I've been in economic development for 35 years. Most recently, some of you know me from the time as Secretary of Commerce in the state of Florida for 4 years. Finished that up in March of 15, and since then have started a consulting practice that we have 6 of us in our practice. We do economic development work, site selection work, and we've done work now in over 30 states, but based out of Tallahassee. Before that, coming to Florida, I was head of economic development for the state of Mississippi. So if you want to talk about rural background, I am passionate about rural America and how we move the needle in rural parts of our country, and certainly in the state of Florida, looking at ways that we can maintain the beauty of rural America, but also look at ways that we can develop economic opportunity for the citizens.
Good morning. My name is Beth Cicchetti, and I have spent the last 20 years working in economic development in Florida, and the most recent quarter in economic development in rural Florida, focused on strategic sites identification and site readiness. And 2 examples of that resulting in 2 greenfield projects in Gaston County that have an over $5.5 million economic impact in both instances. And unique to those projects were the requirement of new utility and road infrastructure in order for those companies to make a Florida decision. In one case, the project and the new infrastructure allowed the municipality to double their gas revenues, which allows them to reinvest those dollars into the economic strategies for that community. In addition to that, I lead our state professional association for economic workforce and community developers. We have over 160 member organizations representing 400 professionals across the state of Florida who practice in planning, in economic strategies, in marketing, in lead generation, and are really out there promoting the competitive assets of their communities and convening all of the stakeholders to achieve positive solutions in job creation and capital investment for their communities. And I'd like to thank Susan Ramsey, who is on our board of directors. Secretary Tebow did ask FEDC to assign 3 individuals, 1 to each of the CORES task forces. And so we just want to thank Susan in her role as the regional director for the North Florida region for serving on this task force.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Collins. I am the Chief Operating Officer, Chief Financial Officer of CareerSource Florida. We are the Workforce Policy and Investment Board for the state of Florida. We administer Department of Labor federal grants, like very similar to 49 other states. And honestly, I think I may have the easiest job up here because everybody talked about the importance of workforce before I even got a chance to take the microphone. It's a common theme. What we're seeing across the board now is, especially in robust economic times now, that the importance of workforce and actually the reality of actually getting a project like this or actually sustaining a business is very apparent. How you foster that going forward, how you engage with young people, how you certainly don't forget our rural areas of opportunity and make sure that that rising tide lifts all boats is exactly what we're here to discuss this morning. And looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. It's certainly a pleasure to have you here and spend your time with us. Economic and workforce development was one of the most important issues that you brought up. So anyway, we're going to be free-form from here on. So we will certainly have you ask questions directly to a panel member. If you allow me some freedom to maybe, if another panel member wants to also add to that question, that they can do so. Also, if you have some expertise in the area that you want to add to help educate the rest of us, that would be great to do. So anyway, any questions to start out with? Okay, I have one. How would you address having access to a new corridor? How would that impact economic and workforce development? Diane, you want to start out with that?
One of the experiences I had in the mid-90s when I served on the Green Cove Springs City Council, our little city had been a hub during the Navy years before they shut down the base. So we had a booming population, and then it went to nothing. And then we became known as Little Detroit. So if you wanted to buy a car, you came to Green Cove, and all the car dealers shut down. So we were really a city without a label. We were just Green Cove Springs, and we didn't know what our future was. So all of the city council members had decided we need to get focused on economic development. Well, guess what? That would be like saying we need an ocean so that we'll have more high tax property. Let's get some surf shops in here. There's no way we could develop an ocean, and without DOT, there was no way that we could develop the transportation that we needed to put us on the map. I spoke earlier today with a realtor in Clay County that specializes in the Green Cove Springs area, near and dear to my heart, and I asked him what he has seen since the Beltway got approved and funded. He said in the last 4 years, this year he expects to be the same, the 5th year, he has seen commercial properties rise by at least 10% annually. The sale houses have risen in price also. Of course, in Florida, we have the 3% cap, so the people that live in that area are not experiencing more than a 3% increase. But he said it's gotten to the point now that most of the commercial property has been bought up, and we just turned dirt in the Green Cove Springs area a few months ago. So it's already bought up, and the jobs are coming in. We've maintained, we have a very large worldwide manufacturer that does the trucks. It's called Vacon. They vacuum out sand from pipes and that sort of thing. They have expanded exponentially, and they stayed in Green Cove because the Beltway was coming, and they have to get their trucks to the port. So now they'll have a much better access by doing that. So it's helped us create jobs, and it's helped us conserve jobs to have a little city with a big road coming through.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Guillermo. I'd like to add to that. I've been a resident of Tallahassee since 1994, and I cut my teeth in economic development on an infrastructure penny. And that infrastructure penny was due to be renewed, and as you know, these things go on the ballot to the citizens for adoption. So it's important to do careful planning and get your description put together so that you can achieve what it is that you as a community are looking to do at the ballot box. And one of the best practices that I continue to tout across the state of Florida in my work with the Florida Economic Development Council is the formation of the Environmental and Economic Consensus Committee. And this committee was formed with businesses who provide goods and services, professional services, and others who work to preserve the beautiful environment that we enjoy in Tallahassee and a lot of the headwaters and other things that are important to our friends to the south. And in order for the local government to adopt this idea and to help fund that through the infrastructure penny, it was important for the community to focus on regional stormwater ponds. We wanted to add a new corridor in the urban services area and expand an existing corridor. And so it was important to look at the regional stormwater capacities across the entire community. It was important to plan for where we were going to correct some of the existing flooding that was occurring. And in order for us to kind of jumpstart, if you would, the capital improvement plans of our major employers like the university, like the local governments, and like our hospitals, these new corridors needed to be in place. And so by coming together and putting together a plan that took care of our environmental needs first and then went into the construction and the development phase, that has led to quite a bit of economic opportunity along those new corridors in that area.
Anybody else on the panel? Sharice?
Just to add a little piece for Clay County and the First Coast Expressway, just to give you a little timeline, because as you talk about these changes that are coming about, I think it would be helpful to see what we're experiencing today and what we've experienced in the recent past in Clay County. So First Coast Expressway, just to give you a visual, is connecting Duval County, essentially coming all the way through Clay County, and then hooking up with I-95 in St. Johns County. So it's just a big loop all the way through Clay County.
46 miles.
How many?
46.
46. I'm glad you said that, Greg, because I couldn't remember how long it was. So 46 miles has been in the plans for years, 30 plus years. This road's been being talked about. I was a commissioner from 6 to 14. That's when really a lot of the community meetings and that kind of thing were getting kicked off. The first phase of that expressway is complete. It goes from I-10 to Blanding Boulevard in the northern part of our county. They're on phase 2 now, which goes from Blanding Boulevard essentially to the Shands Bridge in Green Cove Springs. And then the third phase gets us across the St. Johns River and over to I-95 through St. Johns County. And I say that because the second leg, which is what's in production today, and Greg will probably correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but we're giving them up till, I think, 2025 to have that section done, but word on the street is like 2023 that phase 2 may be done. And then maybe up to 2027 for the third phase. I only say all that because in Clay County, we are seeing so much movement, like Diane talked about with one of our local realtors. That road will not be completed for at least probably 7 more years, all the way through. But the movement, and we can talk about this more, zoning, land use, all that kind of stuff has been done. Comp plan changes, that kind of thing has been done. And what we're seeing today, still is we're seeing a lot of dirt and a lot of dump trucks. We're seeing movement by businesses and landowners to get things in place. So it's crazy in Clay County in the fact that everybody's moving, even though that road's probably another 7 years out before completion. So just wanted to kind of put that timeline in your mind as to how quickly things get moving when the rubber meets the road. So
okay, let me hold off on. I'm going to give you a chance to bring up any other thoughts, but Ken, you have a question here. I'm so glad to see some of your name tags up. Otherwise, we were going to start bribing you. But go ahead, Ken.
So for the last 3 meetings, I've been struck by there being 2 completely opposite statements being made by members of the task force and by members of the public. One of the statements is, we're scared to death of these roads because it's going to turn our town into a ghost town. Overnight, we're just not going to have any more town here because of this road. And then, like 30 seconds later, the next person says, we're scared to death of this road because hundreds of thousands of people are going to descend on us overnight, and we're just going to be deluged. Well, obviously, reality is somewhere in the middle. My question is, where is the most likely middle, and how do we get these corridors to be in the best part of the middle where we're getting the best of both rather than the worst of both?
wants to handle that? Go ahead, Greg.
I'll start. So, excuse me, Ken, that's a great question. I think when you start looking at overall economic development strategy, it always has to start at the community level. And so how people define, if I went around this room and asked everybody for their definition of economic development and what success looks like, I'm going to get as many different answers as there are people in this room. So it really has to start at the local level as what do we want to do, or what do we want to do as a community, and how do we get there? So I've been very fortunate to have spent time in every one of these counties and listened to leadership talk about what it is they want to do. And what comes out of that is that balance that you're talking about. But the issue every one of them talk about is, one, there's no connectivity. And I talk about connectivity not just from a standpoint of roads and to market, but also connectivity from things like broadband and being able to access a global technology market. Those are issues that we hear about. We also then hear on the other side of the beautiful resources and assets of this region that we want to maintain, and that to be a part of our economic development strategy. So that starts locally. And when you start planning and looking at where we want to go and how do we have that balance, well, you know, it would be great to have downtowns like we have here in Madison, where people will stop in the commerce and build economic wealth. But you have to be able to get there. You have to be able to have some type of connectivity to do that. And at the same time, protecting the resources is part of that strategy. So I think, Ken, the real beginning, and this is what's beautiful about this process, each county in this region has the opportunity to set that in motion through good strategic planning, understanding where it will have impact. So there is that balance of that we can have, you know, visitors to our communities, leave money behind, and at the same time, we can protect the integrity of the environment that we live in today.
Go ahead, Beth.
And I'll give a practical example of how that has occurred between Leon County and Gadsden County in North Florida. You know, I-10 came through many, many years ago, right? And so we struggle every day with 4 interstate interchanges and what's left of our timber industry along that beautiful stretch of interstate interchanges following Hurricane Michael. But then the perception that there is not an economy beyond those exits. And so how do we plan a strategy that will help develop those exits and provide corridors into the various communities? And so that is something that we've been working on for quite a while through the strategic sites identification process as well as site readiness. And we utilize tools such as the Job Growth Grant Fund and the Rural Infrastructure Fund to help move those processes along. But several years ago, there was a private landowner who saw the value in connecting northern Leon County and almost southern Georgia to the west, to Gadsden County, and created the toll road, which is the Orchard Pond Parkway. And that has opened up a continuous corridor through the communities throughout the county. There's 6 municipalities. And so now you have a way for service providers and residents and others to traverse through that area that's internal to the small communities, through Havana, through Quincy, through Gretna, through Greensboro, as their way of travel and to enjoy each of those communities and what they have to offer.
Go ahead, Andrew.
One addition, I think to really answer your question too, everybody would agree that's sort of an iterative approach. I think initially that access may grant access to larger labor sheds, or the people in the community may have access to be able to have employment elsewhere. And then as time goes by, you know, those things start to develop. So you may have several different points through the community planning process, through lots of mechanisms to sort of choose your destination. So that initial access is point 1, and it may be 5 or 10 years later, you are able to choose at what level of impact you are willing to have to retain your sense of place or your own individual community aspect. So I think it's a lot longer story than we think about in just passing.
You know, I've discovered through my life journey that reality is like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. The best reality is created when people come together to create the reality they want. And I think that's what this whole effort is about. Jeff, you, and then Thomas, I'll catch you next.
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you to all of our panelists for being here today. I'll tell you, ever since, and Commissioner Kitchen could vouch for this as well, ever since our colleagues from Hernando County, the commissioners from Hernando County that serve with us on the Hernando Citrus MPO told us that we were spending an awful lot of time talking about and delaying the second phase of Suncoast Parkway coming up through Citrus County. They said this has been an economic boom to our county. They said you guys will see it when it gets there. Well, the tractors are there. They're cutting a swath through the county now, and as has been discussed, there is an awful lot of interest already at the locations of the exits. And so our county commission, obviously, along with staff and administration, we're working on how do we make these areas as construction ready, to use the old phrase, shovel ready as possible. What does that look like? How do we get our hands around this and make it as attractive as possible to the light industry, to people who would bring not just jobs but opportunity to Citrus County? Because I think there's very much a difference there. We have plenty of jobs available in the county. Where we're lacking at is true opportunity for our youth to build a career, to get into an organization where they can climb the ladder. Unfortunately, too often, those folks are leaving town to find those opportunities. So my question is this, after all of that, shovel ready, what does that look like? I have a tremendous amount of respect for the background that we have up there. What does that look like? Is that zoning? Is that water and wastewater? Is it high speed? Is it staff personnel, a fast track to move things through the process when a developer starts looking at this intersection? So I'd be interested to hear what you would think that those companies are looking for when they're taking a peek at Citrus County.
I'll start on that because that's kind of what we do every day. I will back out of it like this. If you think of it in terms of a business making an investment, that decision process is based on risk. And so the least amount of risk in every one of those categories that you talked about all lead to what you see out there in the marketplace, or their utilities, railroads, states, all have site certification programs. But the basic elements that are involved in it are things that are speed to market. So what's speed to market? Control of the property, set price on the property, wetlands mitigation. Has it had phase one environmental? What infrastructure is on site? If it's not on site, what's the timeline to get it there? What's the cost to get it there? Who's going to pay for it? What is broadband capacity for it? It's all of those factors. And I can tell you that, I think states have done a really good job on the certification process, but at the same time, I wouldn't go through and I just look at the bullets of what's necessary and what you're trying to attract and see if they marry up. Because what's right for some may not be right for you. But it's looking at that decision tree of mitigating risk along the way. Is it zoned properly? If it's not, then what's that look like? Is this something we really want? It's all those different things. And so I know that when we're out and we're working with our clients and we're on a site like that, and we have that information, those sites have a huge advantage of a piece of raw land because we don't know the risks that are associated with that piece of property.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Cherise. You wanted to say something?
So I would just like to add, I think all of those things are important, and a lot of those things are discussions we're having right now. So when we look at the interchanges, one of the biggest things we've done is we've had a lot of discussion with our larger landowners within the county. And a couple of those interchanges that are key to our economic development and key to our jobs are within a couple of those largest landowners' properties. So we've had a lot of discussion with them. The land use and the zoning is a must. We also drove that land use and zoning by using our community partners. So by talking to our health care partners, hey, what do you want it to look like to get a hospital here? Because I think driving for the right product is super important, like you said. I mean, everybody needs a fast food restaurant, but we want the health care, we want the advanced manufacturing. So talk to those entities and those people, make those relationships with those folks, figure out what it is they're looking for, have those same discussions with the large landowners, and at the same time, you also have to be having discussions with those folks in utilities. For us, everybody today wants gas, everybody wants broadband, water and sewer, a lot of that in some of the more rural parts of Clay County we still don't have. So those are discussions before those folks to come in. If you can have as much as that ready as possible, it's gonna get you there a lot quicker. One of the things we also do with our planning and zoning department is we fast track stuff. So for example, we have one of our hospitals, one of our local hospitals, and I'll say, Commissioner Hutchings could say if she agrees with this or not, this growth in the expressway our health care has just exploded in Clay County. Forever, we had one hospital since like the early 1970s, I think. We have 3 today. We have a couple freestanding ERs. One of our newer hospitals, Baptist, has a freestanding ER and a medical office. They're coming into our office and having discussions now for a 5-story hospital addition to add on to that. So one of the things we do within the office is try to do a lot of fast tracking for folks like that and have a lot of communications, a lot of relationships. Today, a lot of folks, it seems that there's not a lot of communication, so they'll turn stuff in. If we don't know you've turned stuff in up at the front counter, we can't help you to fast track it. So I think I've got a lot of notes, and I think you can get 2 things out of it. Relationships is hugely important in moving this forward like you and your communities want to do it, and communication. Lots and lots and lots of communication with community members, with industrial partners, all of those folks. But you can help drive the train as to what you want those interchanges to look like and what you want those job centers to look like if you've got all those in the same circle.
Beth? You getting what you want out of your question there, Jeff?
No, I'm
You're
good.
good?
I'm enjoying this. Thank you.
The Florida Economic Development Council is focused on 3 of the 39 goals that have been identified in the Florida 2030 blueprint process. And all 67 counties and over 10,000 individuals had input to the creation of that plan. And we're focused on making Florida the top state for gross domestic product and the top most diversified economy, as well as doubling the rural share of gross domestic product in Florida. Does anybody know what the rural share of GDP is currently? So it's somewhere around 2.4%. So, and that would be huge for our economies in Florida. One of the ways to do that, and one of the most impactful industry sectors for growing GDP is manufacturing. Across the board, independent of which sector of manufacturing, whether you're looking at pharmaceuticals or food or technologies or other types of things, that is one of the most impactful. Also moving items, transportation and movement of goods is a huge driver in growth of GDP. There will be a summit, and has been annually this will be the 3rd year, that's held by Florida Makes, which is our manufacturing extension partnership in Florida, and it'll be at the end of May. It's called the Make More, Move More Summit, or the Florida, I think, maybe I gave it a new name, who knows. But that is something that I would encourage your communities to attend. We partner, all of the practitioners in Florida partner with CareerSource Florida and their business development team and Enterprise Florida to focus on targeted industry sectors that have been determined to diversify our economy and provide high-wage jobs. And so those are things that your community can look at and then determine what types of assets, through exercises that Grace team can help with, to determine what types of assets you have in your communities that can leverage these areas for which we already have a tremendous business development program where we're trying to bring those opportunities to our state. So I encourage you to interact with both of those organizations as you put your plan together.
Andrew, hold off a second. Let me get Thomas's question in. Go ahead.
Thanks, Guillermo. I wanted to start by following up on Ken's question, which I think is a really great one. Right? There's this inherent almost conflict that we kind of see where we had somebody at a previous meeting talking about the city of Williston and what detriment there was to their downtown economy when the state roads were widened and it's no longer comfortable to walk around their downtown businesses. But then we also see sprawl effects from roads, and people say, well, there's too much growth through economic activity. And sort of a real life example of that, I'm from the city of Gainesville, and if you look at where all our new retail goes, where new housing goes, it's not north of town, it's not east of town, it's not south of town, it's out by the interstate. If you look at I-10, you get sort of the exact same example, where we're not seeing necessarily growth in downtown Madison, we see it down south by the interstate. If you look at Tallahassee, where there's a lot of growth caused by government and the universities, but Tallahassee, just like Gainesville, isn't growing south or east or west, it's only growing north towards that interstate. So if we have a qualitative preference for how we want a community to look or grow, and I think I hear that from a lot of the task force members, that they want to retain an agricultural economy, they want to retain an economy that's based on cultural tourism, they want to retain an economy that's based on ecotourism. There's only one Ichetuckney Springs, and you can't go see it in Orlando. When in this planning process do we talk about best promoting and protecting those assets while something like a transportation facility comes in that can be an opportunity but can also be a hindrance or be a threat? How do we balance those things? When do we need to be doing that planning? And specifically, what kind of policies do we need to be putting into place?
Since I cut you off, Andrew, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. It kind of works well to answer some of your questions as well as that concern. And I think part of the last answer is to not forget some of the unforeseen assets that you may have, like certain segments of the population which may need to be included in this conversation or in this growth. And specifically to your question, I think one of the hallmarks to retaining that sense of place and that future, however you've defined it, is engagement with your younger population, with your youth. And that can start to impact things as far as educational alignment, what sort of activities or programs you're actually offering in your K-12 schools. It can be what that future holds for that person once they may want to leave your community and then hopefully come back. But I think that sort of that cultural retention instilled at a very young age is probably one of the core drivers to answer your question. And I think that all these other things provide avenues to sort of be a force multiplier in that if you've already had that plan, if you know where you want to go, and you've engaged folks and you've set all these other dominoes up, then it's just a light touch to be able to have that plan executed. But I think the timing for that conversation is right now.
I would even, when you talk about economic development strategy, early on in that process is where this should happen. Leadership matters locally in having that vision of what do we want to do, as I said earlier. So if my definition of economic development is solely I want to generate sales tax, then a off-ramp, large convenience type store that's, you see some of these today that generate millions in revenue and sales tax, that may be the definition. Does it move the needle for the community other than revenue? Probably not. So I think it's the bigger picture and how you set that local strategy. So if you start looking at some of these assets that we talk about, and I'm going to steal a term from one of our clients called asset value optimization, And it's looking at that asset. So look at some of these rural communities that we have and the beauty that are there. How do we take advantage of the lifestyle that goes around that to support an economy? Outdoor is a great example. There are great examples of people that have, that kayak, spend times in our water, that spend times on bikes, that are out enjoying the activities that are all over this state. Well, if we look at the traffic that generates, there's also business opportunity from that. And it is a very strategic part of planning that has to be a part of that in order to do it. If you can ignore it and say, oh, people come here all the time, but you're missing opportunities. Going back to what Jeff talked about, people that want to stay in the community, go look at companies like over in the Panhandle, a company called BOTE, B-O-T-E, paddleboard industry. Those are two individuals that chose to move to our state because they liked the lifestyle, they enjoyed the water. They started making paddle boards in the garage, and lo and behold, they found out there was an industry out of it, and the cottage industry grew into something else, but they still hold dear to their whole culture of their company as we embrace the water and the lifestyle we live. And so that is early on in that process of saying these are some things in our county. If given the opportunity, we're going to continue to embrace that, but we're also going to use this to enhance it. And so that's that balance. And fortunately, this process has started early, that there should be that opportunity to talk about that because it goes to that definition. If we're going to take advantage of that asset, as Beth was saying, we need to start talking about now identifying and how this plays into it so that we can create economic wealth in our community. That's a long answer, but that's a very strategic process.
Okay. Mr. Vaughn, you got a question?
All right, is this on? There we go. All right, so we're about time to where we're going to be wrapped up. So this is going to be for all of our panelists, okay? I want you to give, and we'll start with Diane, just so you can start thinking as I ask the question. But the same question is for each of you. Give me your elevator speech to a local government official who may be on our task force or in attendance today that's asking this question. There was a term that was mentioned earlier, and Gray, I think you mentioned it, of good strategic planning. That is key in regards to being prepared for, for the future. When it comes to a new corridor or for a proposed roadway as the Suncoast corridor, what does that look like? What does that look like? So again, elevator speech, but we're not in New York City. Okay, it's not a 90 floor the elevator. It's a 4-floor elevator. So what does good strategic planning look like? What should locals right now be doing to try to put themselves in a good place to balance both their rural, nature that they want to maintain, but at the same time they know that growth is coming and they want to be able to put themselves in the best place for that.
And notice we didn't hold Greg to an elevator question.
That's right. I had to get there. And now, so I came down the 90 floors, and you're at 4.
Thank you for that. Well, being a layperson, I look at things not so much in terms of the specific industry words, shall we say, the jargon. I look at more of, I'm a mom and I have adult children, and I don't want them to move away. I want them to be able to find a good paying job and live nearby so that our family stays together. If somebody in our family gets sick, I don't want to drive all the way to Jacksonville to get health care. I want good quality health care right in my community. And in Clay County, we did have a hospital that was started by one of our doctors, and it was a lovely little community hospital. And over the years, it was bought out, and finally HCA, which is a very big organization, bought the hospital. But when they started investing? When other hospitals started coming to Clay County. And I used to tell the CEO, have you written that thank you note to St. Vincent's and Baptist? Because if they weren't here, you wouldn't be getting all this money from the corporate office. We're now a level 2 trauma center. For trauma, we don't have to go to Jacksonville anymore. We have it right in our own community. So I think of it more, and I hate to even use the word quality of life because that sounds so esoteric, but I think of it in terms of my family. And I think if you will look at it more in terms of your family, what are you wanting to achieve, and then have input. The environment's important. I want the environment to be great and in better shape than it is today for my grandchildren. So what does that look like? How do we move the needle on that? So I don't know. I think a lot of times the government gets a little bit too much jargon, and if we can just wind it back and think of it in terms of our own personal lives and our families, then there's going to be a better buy-in and you're going to get a better product.
I would just say, I mean, what we've got today is 8 beautiful counties that are unique, just like a lot of Florida. And right now you've got a blank canvas. You've got a beautiful, mostly rural communities, a lot of agriculture, which is a lot like Clay County was, and parts of it still are. So I think the important part is a couple of things that I said earlier. Engagement of everybody in the community, all the stakeholders. It takes work. It takes work. You can't sit in the back seat and not say anything, and then when the road does what you don't want the road to do, then you speak up. That's too late. Now's the time. Now's the time for you to get those community members together. The rural character of your communities matters, so those folks need to be speaking up. You've got a Farm Bureau representative here. You need your cattlemen. You need those environmental folks. Everybody deserves a seat at the table. And you got to do that well at the beginning, because the canvas is a blank canvas right now, but once it gets painted on, it's painted on. So I would say use those relationships. Communication is key. And sometimes you may be talking items to death, but I think that's important to do so in order to get what you want in a community. Because I agree with Commissioner Hutchings. From Clay County, hope my sophomore and senior in high school, decide to stay in Clay County and make that their home. So we got to make that a place for everybody to be able to do so.
You guys can understand my mind thinks pretty strategically, so my elevator speech is very strategic and to the point. One, I want to know the facts. What's the situation? So if you look at the situation in these counties today, and I alluded to it earlier, there is a labor participation issue. If you look at labor participation, people that are working, it's in the low 40s. 42, 43% for most of these counties. That's 12 points below the state. It's significantly below the national average. Why is that? I would want to know that. Get the brutal facts. And so the facts on that is probably connectivity. Whether it's connectivity from roads, it's connectivity from broadband, but there is an issue of connecting our labor to a place to have employment and generate wealth. The second thing I would do is look at my voice of those that are involved in that local level. The voice of the customer, the community, input, like we're having here, pull that into the process. And then I would look at what is my strategy from there. Where do we want to go, how we're going to do it, and who does it benefit? And so if you look at those things, the first thing that would drive that process in my mind would be something I call growth versus development. A garbage pile can grow. Economic development is about refining and planning and knowing where we're going. And so that would be, all those elements would be part of my strategy of understanding where we are today, what the people want, and then a tactical way to get there that preserves what we want in our community and what's important to us for economic success.
And really the only thing that I could add to that is engaging your stakeholders where they're at. There'll be different methods for stakeholder engagement, and some of them could look more like focus groups, other could look more like one-on-one conversations. So you need to determine what's the best way to get that input to make everybody, that group of stakeholders, comfortable enough to participate and gain that input. You also want to create a timeline for the process, a beginning and an end. You want to make sure that you have deliverables for each step of that process. So at the end, you can then put all of that information together in order to provide the outcomes that you're looking for.
Okay, Andrew, you're bringing this baby home.
Well, I would have to agree with everything you said. I love the analogy with growth and development. That's a huge distinction. And the only caution that I would say is after 20 plus years in state government and now working in a nonprofit, like strategic plans are great. I'm going to borrow a term that you used earlier last year, Beth. Like, we probably need a little more strategic doing. Like, So like a lot of strategic planning, and then you have many steps of strategic doing. And you have a lot of decision points to make along the way, but you can't forget that you need to take that first step. And you have to get on the road to that growth. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
On behalf of the task force, we want to take this opportunity again to thank you for your participation today. It's very enlightening subjects and discussion that we've had. Thank you for that. Y'all are more than welcome to stay around with us, but I know that y'all have very, very busy schedules. So if you'd like to be excused at this time, again, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have one of our very own, Mr. James Stanberry, the Chief Bureau of Community Planning and Growth with Department of Economic Opportunity. Going to talk with us about comprehensive plans, regional and community visions. And we're eating into your time a little bit, James. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the fact you were willing to let everybody go before I speak. I understand. So I'd like to talk today about how can local governments approach planning in their communities for the corridors. They gave me a clicker, and if I mess it up, then you'll know how my 21-year-old son feels when I'm trying to get on Netflix. So the best approach for planning for a community and for new things that may come into effect a community is perhaps to take a step back and look at a community vision for that local government, that area, and what does the community want that to look like. That then leads into comprehensive plans, which then are implemented through land development regulations and through permitting. Statutorily, where are we coming from? So 163 requires that all local governments have a comprehensive plan for how they are going to address growth in their community. There are certain requirements for elements, objectives, policies, and land use maps, transportation maps, environmental resource maps, etc. They have a lot of control over how those are developed and how they meet statutory requirements, and there are many ways to do that. How does this play in with the MCORE effort that we are going through now? The statute many years ago put in that the comprehensive plans were to recognize corridors within their communities. More recently was added in legislation that requires local governments with interchanges on the recommended corridor to review their comprehensive plans and determine whether or not there are any changes needed to the comprehensive plan to address those new corridors, whether it's additional resource policies, land use changes. That's for the local government to look at and assess. So as part of this effort today, DEO, with a great amount of help from DOT, looked at all of the comprehensive plans within the task force area and looked for examples of policies and objectives in those comprehensive plans. This is certainly not an entire comprehensive look at every policy, but we pulled some that will be applicable. If we missed some good ones in your community, I apologize for that. So looking at planning horizons within comprehensive plans. These are each of the counties, their current planning horizons. You can see they range from 2024 through 2035. So again, there's an opportunity to go in there and look at your comprehensive plans at this time to see what steps do you want to take toward whatever you think should be your future. We have the municipalities, again, ranging in planning horizons from 2022 to 2028. Some of them have already passed. Again, an opportunity to step back, take a look at your comprehensive plan, and determine what do we see as our vision for our community coming up. Comprehensive plans also include conservation elements within them that have specific policies and objectives that are protecting environmentally sensitive lands. They include, generally the conservation elements within the study area include policies, including, for instance, in citrus, using buffers, and some will also identify the resource and locate a land use around that resource that they consider to be compatible. Other counties might use post-development regulations. Some will look at protecting the resource directly through conserving the quality and quantity of the resource. They will discourage incompatible uses. They'll establish management areas with limited uses, with density limitations. Some of the important resources that they're looking to protect within these areas include recharge areas, mostly water-related areas, though we do have forest lands in there, and there are upland habitats also that bear consideration in any planning effort. So there are also preservation areas set aside for agricultural interests. Generally, these are rural, land-oriented objectives and policies that look to preserve an important agricultural resource within that community. There are also, at the other end of the planning spectrum, urban areas that there are specific policies that maximize those urban areas. One of our planning credos in the planning world is let rural be rural, let urban be urban. And so some of the local governments have taken that opportunity to define their urban areas through whether you call them urban service boundaries, urban growth boundaries, urban service areas, where they want to concentrate more dense land uses and to provide those services for those areas in an efficient manner. So some examples of where those land uses and approaches that some of the counties have taken include Citrus County and their future land use element, where they designated commercial nodes and rural activity centers with specific development criteria. Jefferson County, they took the approach of designating mixed-use interchange business activity centers at each of the county's I-10 interchanges. Other counties within the area have taken similar approaches, with Levy County also using nodes. Madison County, similar to Jefferson, they've designated highway interchange districts at the interchanges with I-10. Taylor County designated the Perry Foley Airport as an aviation-related commercial district, and have also defined a regional employment center within the comprehensive plan that was achieved through their Vision 2060 plan. Another area for consideration the task force may want to look at is large areas that have already been planned for in terms of single projects. Examples are some of them may still currently be developments of regional impacts. It's a program that's no longer statutorily required, but there's certainly a number of projects out there that were planned under that program. Looking at those may be a consideration. Examples include the cruise ship terminal, Beverly Hills, ERI, and Betts Farm. I think I personally reviewed that development order some 30 years ago. Taylor County identified regional employment centers, and along with sub-area plans for projects such as Sweetwater Resort Community, Dixie, Gilchrist, Jefferson, Lafayette, Levy, and Madison counties don't have any listed planned DRIs or sector plans, but there may be some relatively large developments in those communities. So in addition to the large-scale developments, there are larger employment centers identified. So let's look at the future land use maps. Every local government, as part of their comprehensive plan, is required to have a future land use map showing where they are putting different land uses, what resources they are protecting, what roadways are coming through and planned for, and to try and locate along those resources and facilities the plan for the appropriate facilities and protections. So, for instance, here with Citrus County, they have corridor planning zones along State Road 44, US 41, US 19, and other roadways that are there to promote planned and orderly development along those corridors. They also have commercial nodes along US 19 to manage and direct commercial development through the use of general standards and access management. They have future commercial land uses that are adopted within on the plan and implemented through the comprehensive plan. These include locations near State Road 44, 41, and US 19. There's also an interchange management areas requirement that ensures development in and around new interchanges maximize economic development while minimizing impacts to access to the Suncoast Parkway Stage 2. Dixie County, their future land use include primarily a lot of environmental sensitive areas or agriculture. Those are what are shown there in the greens and the tan hash areas. Those generally allow densities somewhere within the range of 1 to 5 units, 1 unit per 5 acres, or as high as perhaps even 1 unit per 40 acres. Then there are also commercial and residential districts that are more concentrated around the Cross City area and areas of US 19 near Old Town. So then Jefferson County, their future land use, again, most of the county is designated as agriculture lands. Those are the pinks and the whites, or conservation, which is are the tan areas. The residential areas are more the reds and orange, and the mixed use are the green. These, again, are concentrated more near major corridors such as US 90, US 19, Florida 59, and I-10. Lafayette County, again, you're looking at primarily depicting agricultural lands in the green hash area, conservation in the tan areas, and environmentally sensitive areas within the tan hash marked areas. Again, residential and commercial more around Mayo and along US 27 and State Road 53. There are also recreation and public lands located in the purple areas. So Levy County. Levy County, they have urban areas that are designated as municipal service districts. They have overlay zones that are used to identify existing locally recognized communities. They have water and sewer districts. They have mixed use districts and springs protection zones for along with protecting environmentally sensitive lands such as wetlands and depicting the coastal high hazard area. They have natural reservations shown, and these are areas that are designated for conservation purposes and are owned or operated by federal, state, regional, or local nonprofit agency. There's also the Levy County uses the George T. Lewis Airport Master Plan as the future land use guide for development in and around the airport. Madison County, again, clearly separates areas for urban and rural land uses and identifies overlay zones, primarily agriculture with the green hashed area, but there are urban development overlays along with for the Greenville, Madison, and Lee area. So then Taylor County, again, primarily agriculture, conservation within the green hash and the solid green areas. They have included the Option Vision 2060 Plan overlay. They have designated their urban development areas. They have mixed use in orange near Deacle and Keaton Beach, Steinhatchee, and Perry. There are residential shown on here in the yellow that are around the perimeter of mixed-use areas and along the eastern end of US 19. They also depict the coastal high hazard area. So switching from maps to objectives and elements, all of the local governments have transportation elements. Some of them may refer to them as traffic circulation elements, but that's where the more specific planning for transportation occurs. Some of the comprehensive plans, they address additional transportation-related sub-elements that may include transportation and land use. They may include bike and ped, transit, interchange management. Future transportation maps are also adopted that will show where future roadways are either planned to be widened or to be located. These are some examples of some more specific policies located within the Citrus, Dixie, Gilchrist, and Jefferson counties that that address transportation and infrastructure within those communities. We also have some more examples of transportation element policies for Lafayette, Levy, Madison, and Taylor. And as discussed before, a community's beginning of planning can be done through visioning. And so one example of that in this area is the Taylor County Economic Development Plan. This document helps as they have taken from that and put into their comprehensive plan policies and objectives guiding future decisions and growing the type of economy that they would like to have. So another opportunity to take a step back and see what do we want our community to look like. A lot of plans out there, water supplies, future transportation plans, etc. How do they work into a comprehensive plan? Not all of these plans came online at the same time, but they do all come through the comprehensive plan, because all good planning, when it all comes down to it, is local. And so the water supply plan feeds into the policies that the local government is going to take to implement that larger effort on behalf of their community. Same with the different transportation plans. You're looking at policies that would implement those transportation plans as well as depicting them on their future transportation map within the comprehensive plan. Once you've done that, that then feeds into the land development regulations that would be adopted or implementing then those visions and plans. So let's talk about how you amend a comprehensive plan. I think most are familiar with it, but just to give a higher view of it, there are three processes for amending the comprehensive plan. There is the state coordinated review process. This is a process for specific types of comprehensive plan amendments associated either with large developments or environmentally sensitive areas, also known as areas of critical state concern. Don't see that probably the types of amendments that you may be considering for the comprehensive plan for this particular issue are probably going to be going through the expedited state review process. This is a two-stage process wherein a local government proposes a comprehensive plan. That the amendment is shared with all of the different state and regional agencies that are statutorily required to look at it. They give their input directly back to the local governments. Then the local governments consider those comments during whether or not to determine whether or not to adopt the amendment, modify the amendment, or go ahead and adopt it as proposed. Then that adopted amendment is sent back to the Department of Economic Opportunity along with any agencies that commented on it. And the department will determine whether or not, based on any comments that those agencies or our own agency may have had, whether or not to challenge the amendment. That's a 30-day review. In a nutshell, that's the state expedited review. I think there's a flow chart of it within your notebooks, and there's for the audience, there's a larger poster board version of it back there that looks somewhat like a diagram of a transistor radio, but it is available back there, and if anybody has any questions on the process, I'll be around this afternoon to certainly answer those. So, given what we're working with statutorily and everything within this particular process, currently while the task force is meeting, there certainly isn't a hair on fire kind of hurry to amend the comprehensive plan at this time, but it's a good time to start thinking, what if? And then once the task force submits its final report, the local government can begin to amend its plan if they think the timing is right at that point. The statute, as we looked at earlier, does require that by December 31st of 2023, that a local government determine through review of their comprehensive plan whether there is a need to amend the comprehensive plan to address any of the land uses or natural resource protections that may be necessary if the corridor is coming through or going to have an influence on their community. That's it in a nutshell. Hope I get you to lunch on time. And that's that.
Thank you, Chief Stansberry. Love that job title, by the way. And secondly, I don't think most of the people here would know what a transistor radio is, so we might have to explain that. But we got some questions right off the bat. Go ahead.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Stansberry. One of the things I noticed in your presentation, and I'm sure it's driven by, growth coming into communities. I mean, when you're a citrus county and you're experiencing a lot of change, you need to make sure that your comp plan is staying right ahead of that change. But if you're growing more slowly, then, the plan maybe need not change that much. My recollection, having served on the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council many, many years ago, was that there was a very and it was under a different set of planning regulations, there was a very close relationship between the municipalities and the county governments in that region. Some of these are in that region. Primarily because it is very expensive for a local government to have the resources to do this work, and so most of them contracted, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, with their regional planning council. So whether it's through a regional planning council or more local, if they're local planning staff, or whether they might contract with a planning firm or a nonprofit or something, is the state allocating resources to, it looks like in addition to the 8 counties, there are something like 24 municipalities within this region to make sure that if they wish to go ahead and get out in front of this growth and be strategic, as the last panel recommended, that they have the state support to do that with the geographic information systems and the community engagement processes and the visioning documents that we all know. Most of them are really, focused on public safety and maintaining their streets and their stormwater systems, and this is a layer that they may not be geared up to do. Is the state of Florida supporting them in doing that if they wish to do it?
Yes, ma'am. We have one of the programs under our department is the Community Planning Technical Assistance Grants, and so currently there is in the budget funds set aside for helping local governments with planning efforts in their community. And I think there are 2 different numbers right now, and depending on which house of the legislature you're looking at. But we will certainly, assuming that it's approved in the budget by the legislature and signed by the governor, we will strongly consider any planning effort applications for that grant money when figuring out the distribution of those funds.
Wait, you want to add something?
In addition to the technical assistance program that's offered by the Department of Economic Opportunity, DOT has had a long, fruitful, collaborative relationship with DEO. So the department is committed to working with our DEO partner and also working with the regional planning councils to provide the resources that's necessary to help our local communities to advance their visions and amend their local comprehensive plans if needed to.
That answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Lee?
Yeah, I've got several points. One on regard to that last discussion about aid from the state to local governments for these planning processes. I believe that in addition to the budget item, there is also an amendment being offered to a Senate bill. I believe the number of the bill is 410 by Senator Perry that would actually prioritize state aid based on CORES. And it is proposing directing additional funds to the counties affected by CORES. I'm not sure where that amendment is going. I know it's in play, but just FYI, there is an amendment related to that. The second point I wanted to make is you did not mention in your presentation, at least if you did, I may have missed it, a discussion of the EAR process. And I'm not sure where each of these counties that you went through a description of their plans are in the EAR process. But the EAR process is a process that comes under that state coordinated review process. And it is perhaps what I would describe as the most comprehensive plan revision process that goes on, where a county or a city is going to make sort of long-range proposals to make change to its plan. Can you tell us where we are with that in each of these counties when they're coming up on that process?
Okay. As every local government currently under the statute is on a 7-year schedule to look back at their comprehensive plans and to see whether or not there have been any statutory changes that affect comprehensive plans for which there is a need to amend their comprehensive plan. If there have not been any statutory changes, or if a local government has already addressed those statutory changes, then they would notify the department as such. We've already made the changes, we looked at our plan, we do not think that there is any need to update our plan at this time. They can also send us a letter saying, yep, you're right, this change was made, we need to address it, and we'll do so in our ear-based amendments. It's also an opportunity where a local government, normally a local government is required to have a 10-year planning horizon minimum in their comprehensive plan. And it's that opportunity to look back at that and say, 7 years ago, our emphasis was on this. And that was a good thing at that time. But we've already achieved that, or we've decided that isn't the direction the community wants to go in, and we want to emphasize this particular matter. Or this we tried, it didn't work, so we want to do it this way. There is that opportunity as part of the ear-based amendments to go ahead and do that. It is no longer a required update that it used to be. That changed in 2011. But it is an opportunity there to take that in a structured manner.
Yeah, I would suggest that the statutory change that amounts to the advent of the CORES process is perhaps a statutory change that would rise to the level where it should trigger an ear-based review. The final thing that I wanted to say is looking at each of these future land use maps that you've presented this morning, and just one thing for the staff, at least my packet was missing the Taylor County map. I had all the others, but Taylor County was not in my packet. But looking at them all, one common feature that they have is they all have very tightly configured urban areas, either designated as urban growth areas or sort of de facto urban growth areas. And they virtually all are located along the US 19 corridor. And just a thought as we go further in this process, it appears to me that a path that is the most consistent with what the counties have laid out already in their comprehensive plans in terms of their aspirations for future growth does sort of align with the US 1998 corridor. A concern that we have from the environmental standpoint about US 1998 being a corridor is that right now that corridor is largely without any access control. And the potential is there for growth to sort of start stripping along US 19 and end up looking kind of like it does in Pasco County on US 19. And if you've ever been there, as I'm sure many of you have, you'll know that it would be a pretty stark departure from the agriculture and forestry and natural resource-based economies that you have in most of the counties through which this road would pass. And so I think that as we move forward and look at potential corridors, looking at minimizing the potential for sprawl in a way that violates the intent of the comprehensive plans that are already in place is very important. Most of the local governments here do not have immense planning staffs. This is not Sarasota County or Orange County or even Citrus County. Most of them have very small staffs in terms of planning capability. And the last thing that would shape growth well in Levy County or Dixie County or Taylor County or Jefferson County or Madison County or any of these smaller counties would be for all of a sudden for the county commission to be overwhelmed by 34 applicant-based amendments being proposed to their comprehensive plans all at once because landowners were taking the opportunity to see the future path of MCORES as some kind of bonanza, and they want to get in on the action and run through real quick with plan amendments that kind of force their own vision on the plan on the county rather than the county's own vision itself being what carries forward. So I just would encourage that leadership in moving forward where the county carries its own aspirations into the future in the form of its plans is really important rather than being driven case by case piecemeal by people who walk in your door and say, here's my 60-acre plan amendment or my 600-acre plan amendment or my 6,000-acre plan amendment based on where we think this road is going to go. That would be the worst outcome.
Mr. Weimer, you are at the outer. We got one in the corner. Yeah, Mr. Weimer, he's in the outer stretches of my vision. I barely picked him up. Go ahead.
Kent Wimmer, Defenders of Wildlife. From the work plan, I see we're going to be discussing the high levels needs for the first time next month. When will DOT or DEO, when are your agencies going to provide a focused needs determination for economic feasibility determination so we can begin to evaluate what the realistic potential economic impact is to these affected communities and to the taxpayers and to the road users elsewhere who will likely be paying for these roads?
Hey, Kim. We do have a session after lunch to discuss financial feasibility, so we'll go a little more detail, if you don't mind. But it's going to be a high-level discussion because we've got to get further along in the design to actually get a true cost and a true financial plan, but we'll go in a little more detail.
It just seems we're getting the cart before the horse. We're selling a lot of economic opportunities and impacts, but we don't know the cost. And it's really challenging because it was assigned to us by the law to provide a needs assessment, through this task force. And it doesn't seem either the needs assessment or the economic feasibility, we're going to be able to effectively address that so we can come up with a realistic evaluation and recommendation. Thank you.
Administrator Kaufman?
Yes, sir. I had a question as it relates to the changes of the comp plans or land use maps. Is when should we look at making those? Because if you look at our current map, you wouldn't see a large corridor on there, because that's because we didn't even envision the opportunity of getting a corridor. So why would you put that in a map when you had no vision of it? But with this opportunity, we can see what the vision could be at the county level. And so that's why Madison County has supported it. We also support it coming to I-10 in Madison County if we can get that. We would love that. But my question is where do we take it? I mean, I can't go ahead and do the plan and then DOT is going to follow my plan of where the road's going to go. I'm kind of at the mercy of waiting for the corridor to be shown to me before I can start making those plans. But I guess it's kind of like a chicken and the egg. But can you help me figure out what would be the process that we should go through?
Yes, sir. The task force will be coming out with its report this year. Based on that report, then the local governments may begin to start looking at their plan. as DOT comes along with more finalizing their plans based on that report, then I think the local governments can move forward more with looking at their comprehensive plans. That effort, the statute requires that that particular effort be done by December 31st of 2023. So you have, I think the report comes out this December, correct? October, excuse me. Then you basically got 2 years that you could be looking at your comprehensive plan to determine whether or not you feel there are any changes needed to work with that corridor. Does that?
Yes, sir, that answers my question. Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
Nope, no more questions. We're going to break for lunch. It's going to be a quick 1 hour. So let's be back here at 1:30. We've got a jam-packed agenda for this afternoon. 1:30.